Now I welcome anyone else. Perhaps you can begin some brother there.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adolf Mihanjo, for a thought-provoking presentation. Thank you very much. I have 2 points, possibly just a comment or a contribution that I don't know. Maybe as I speak, it might end up to be a question as well. I think the first part I would want to touch on is with regards to what you commented on, Brother Datius. You made a statement. I think you made a statement as your understanding of what Doctor just finished teaching us on. You say that ethics without reason is impossible. Ethics, it seems, according to how we have understood Doctor here, ethics without reason is impossible. But I would like to go deeper than that, to say, is it really true that ethics without reason is impossible? Or it's the issue at hand here is you can be ethical. However, your ethical outlook is not grounded on rational basis. And now the danger with that, that's my understanding now, to what Doctor said, according to what Doctor mentioned here, any outlook of ethics that is not grounded by rational justification results into the 2 dangers he mentioned here: hypocrisy and idiocracy, if I'm not mistaken. Being an idiot and being a hypocrite. Why am I saying that the issue is not behaving because the issue is not being ethical because you haven't reasoned it through? Because I can choose, what is ethics? Simply put, maybe. It's simply doing right or wrong. It's simply a study of moral conduct, So I can take it as it is, I can take it for, let's say, I'm taught in class, or I'm taught in the streets, or I'm taught in my religious affiliations that, okay, as a Tanzanian youth, these are the things that you ought to do, and these are the things that you ought not to do, so that you may excel in life. And I might take them. Why? Because I would want to relate with everybody else, how people are living and all that. And you told me that if I behave this way, then there are these possible advantages that may be attached to me. So I might choose to be ethical in that sense, just by knowing that. But now, is that a firm foundation to attach being ethical to? I doubt it, unless you haven't met conditions that will contradict whatever you have held to be right or wrong. So I think that's a take that I would want to possibly inject a sort of discussion here.
Anyway, so I would start with what you say.
Or maybe, Doctor, should I finish the other one as well?
Okay. Maybe I'll fix that to get to the other one.
Okay, sure.
So take that one with you. We may ask one question. Can we demand a dog an ethical responsibility? I think we can't.
Sure, we can.
What makes us not to demand a dog an ethical responsibility? The assumption that a dog doesn't have the capacity to reason, does not have the capacity to make an analysis of his action, even to make a synthesis of his action. Is simply operating on instinct. He may not have contemplated all the possible effect of his act. Even reflected when he meditated on it. What does that tell us? It tells two things. In order to be ethical, you have to have a capacity for reasoning. One thing. On the other hand, however, you may have that capacity. You may not choose to be ethical. You may choose to be ethical. Meaning that you may not engage your mind to the process of reflection, meditation, contemplation, in order to see the possible effect, in order to make the difference between what it is and what it ought to be. As I said that, according to St. Thomas, ethics is the ordinance of reason proclaimed by interior right of reason itself. So the self is the seed of that. Since we say it's not possible for a dog to be wholly responsible, even to demand to be ethical, we do that on the presupposition that a dog has no rational capacity. But it's also possible, we'll say that, you may have a rational capacity, but you may not choose to engage that rational capacity with reflection, meditation, and contemplation. In that sense, you simply remain with no difference between a stone, no difference between a dog. That one is by choice, not by nature. So a stone is a stone by nature. A dog is a dog by nature. But a man is a man because he is a rational being. A being who can reason. But you may choose to remain. Meaning that when you deny, when you don't want to engage reflection, you want you to engage meditation and contemplation. In other way that when you choose to be lazy to think, when you choose to be lazy to think, you have made a choice to be like a stone, to be like a dog.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Maybe the second.
Yeah, the second point is this. I recall Soren Kierkegaard when he's trying to build a case for his notion of truth is subjectivity. And by subjectivity, he is simply saying that it is important to always practice what he called inwardness, which simply means it's very important to always ask yourself, where do I stand in this issue? So it's like you're trying to project your given ability or capacity to make rational decisions as well, and a call to responsibility. Now, one thing or one critique that I did understand from reading some of his texts, a critique against, always putting reason as an anchor towards a particular solution we're trying to solve, let's say in the philosophical domain, is the idea that sometimes we might face what I can call the infinitude of reasoning. In that we can have everything settled in our minds, like we understand. We understand that without reason, then somebody has not firmly grounded his or her actions ethically, let me say. We may have those understandings. However, now the movement from simply an understanding into actually practice, into being responsible to what you have perfectly understood inside your mind, he presented as there being a gap between thinking correctly and actually doing or converting the conclusions you've come up with through your thinking into deeds. Now, I think I should pose that to Doctor here. From your talk, I have captured the understanding that you are putting it out there, that it is very important to use our capacity for reasoning to solve problems in our societies. One of them being the issue of trying to move away from being a hypocrite and an idiot in terms of the ethical domain. Now, how do we make it possible for one to constantly have that capacity to leap from a mere sweetness of being drunk with ideas concerning ethics into actually putting those ideas into practice, so that him or her can really become the flourishing individual that he or she possibly wishes?
Okay, thank you much for your nice question. I think I would like to look at your question from the angle of aesthetics. Aesthetics simply means beauty. And beauty would be seen to be defined that which pleases when behold. Or the other way, that which attracts. That which attracts. And the human being is not prone to act until there is an attraction. Is attracted to that thing. When you are attracted, there is the inner force to go into that. There is no resistance with the attraction, with the inner force. Now, one may have the idea of something, but may not act on the idea. This would mean that there is some kind of lack of attraction towards the command that the idea imposes. There might be some obscurity. The contradiction there is not cleared within the mind. Some obscurity, cloudiness within that concept. And the contradictions that were there is not clear. So to make a distinct, clear and distinct idea within you that imposes you imperatively to act. There's a deep, when there's a clarity, there's no obscurity on the idea. And there is the elimination of the possible contradictions. The idea imposes on you certain kind of imperativeness to act. Because within the beauty, you assume the perfect beauty, the splendor, the perfect beauty. And in the beauty, there's perfection. harmony, and clarity. There's a splendor. Now, when in the idea there's some obscurity, for instance, you may adhere the issue of justice. It is just justice. Idea in your mind. But yet, you enjoy the product of injustice. You idea the idea of injustice, but yet you enjoy the product of injustice. So in this way, you may in one way talk justice, on the other end do injustice, because you enjoy the idea. You have not been able to eliminate the contradiction. That if I hold justice, I should not also be enjoying the product of injustice. I should not be enjoying it. So that incapacity to eliminate the contradiction within the mind creates a kind of obscurity and cloudiness of the act. And when that obscurity and cloud is there, one does not find it difficult to act double standard. To act this way or this way. There is, yes, a kind of pleasure, one would like to enjoy it because of that kind of contradiction. But there is also a moral command. We say, no, this is not the way to do. You should be consistent. The call for consistency becomes very clear to you when you have eliminated cloudiness and obscurity within that concept. And you enjoy, because you see the beauty itself. And that which is beautiful actually commands action. Because it attracts, it commands attraction. So that's what it does.
Thank you for all your contribution and for the good introduction actually Doctor has given us. My question is, now I want just to return to the topic itself. Can we tie ethics and history? Doctor, in your presentation you have said to this question you have the yes-no answer. I think if I got you right. And you went on upholding the role that reason plays in ethics. But from the example that my brother was giving concerning slavery, I think that we have come to the conclusion that slavery is not a good thing because history has taught us the negative impacts of of slavery to mankind. Is it? Why did you have the yes/no answer in this case? Do you want to tell us that history has no role to play other than reason? And the other question that I'll ask here, is man always rational? This is a question that we are trying to ask ourselves. If man is always rational, why do we sometimes act contrary to what we understand clearly? You have talked that probably we are not so much convinced, or probably by that which we have understood. And if we are convinced to the maximum, then reason will compel us to act the way we have understood. But in reality, it appears like something different. Sometimes we know everything, but we act contrary.
So thank you very much. The first question, you have drawn it from the contribution of the former contributor, taking slavery. At the time of Aristotle and Plato, it was within the culture of the Greek. And it was accepted as something right. Something right. And who produced that history? Maybe, some people maybe. You have to go with the Greek mythology and so on to find who produced that history. But then it was accepted as the right thing to be doing. People were doing it. But then what made the abolition of slave trade? I think, first of all, when the slave were commenced by the Greek as the right thing, it was again in history. History was made at the time. History was made. At that time when history was made, it retained its own autonomy. It may go beyond the intention of the Greek people. Maybe the Greek people want maybe people to stay at home, just as servants at home, not going to other countries, collecting this. Just want to be servants at home, stay there, to work there. So maybe that's their intentions. But it went beyond maybe their intentions. But the point is that history was made. Now, after reflecting the history that was made, in fact, the history that was left as an autonomous, people came to know that there is, of course, some other factor. Let's maybe take one factor. Maybe that there's any human things doing. I have to understand who is a human being. I have to understand how human being ought to be. They found that no, slave trade was authenticated, was commenced for the interest of those who are in power. Then, history as the slave trade was commenced for the interest. History as slavery as a history was commenced for the interest of those who are in power. It was for the interest of the common good, not for the interest of humanity. Then it was abolished. When that slavery was abolished, after that, new history was commenced. History of colonization was commenced. In that case, you find that the relationship between history and ethics is not immediate. It's not immediate, but immediate. Its relationship is only after reflection, meditation, and contemplation on that act, what you produce. In that way, I said yes. But I said no. If we say that, if we took the history from the point of view of when the history is commenced, you do not need reflection, you do not need meditation, you do not need you do not need contemplation on it. You simply have to follow the antiquity, the antiquity. What was commenced there, and nothing new is coming. Nothing new is coming after that one. So you have to follow there. I said that if you do that without an element of reflection, without an element of contemplation, meditation, contemplation, means that the history that was commenced 20,000 years ago, and the history that we have now is a reflection of the dynamics of the events that were going on. And under those dynamics, we drew the ethical order that what it is and what ought to be. Ought to be. So in one way, it is yes, in as much as history becomes the material for reflection, the material for meditation, the material for contemplation, in order to produce new history. But there's no link in the other way when history is seen static. It's seen static. That you have this history and you have this ethics, this ethics, without the mediation. Because history is just a fact, historical facts. And historical facts, they are value neutral. Historical facts are value neutral. You only draw value on it after reflecting, meditating, and contemplating. And these are the works of the mind. It's the works of the mind. And so, if you don't engage the mind on it, you engage the mind on it. If you don't engage the mind on it, you only will have the antiquity, historical antiquity alone, and remain there. But things are moving, going forward. So it will be that you are static there, but reality is moving. That's why I said yes and no in that connection. But answering the second question, rationality. Reason, though every human being has a reason, has a reason. That reason is not in act, it's not in potency. It is simply a capacity that every human being has been given. That capacity has to be nurtured. That capacity has to be nurtured, you to give it for to be nurtured. Now, the power to act on what you think depends also on the capacity under which you nurture. You nurture that capacity you are given, the capacity of nurturing that you are given. In that case, if a society does not have a culture of meditation, a culture of reflection, a culture of contemplation, it's difficult for them to act on what they think. Because they do not actually eliminate the constraints of sensation, sensible data, concept of sensible data. They are not able to limit the concept of sensible data, to eliminate their passions, to eliminate their emotions, to eliminate their history, to eliminate their culture. Mind you, ideas are abstract. They are abstract. It's only people who nurture abstract thinking, they have a clear understanding of the ideas. They have a clear understanding of their perceptions. And they see the beauty in ideas. And only once you see the beauty in those ideas, you are going to act. In most cases, we are not able to act even consistent with it, because we are not being able to eliminate the constraints of our ideas, the constraints of the limitations of our ideas, the determination of ideas. We want to be able to eliminate that one. We are not being able to come to the absolute idea. As Gregory will say, to the total freedom of the idea. Total freedom of the idea. For Hegel, the total freedom of the idea is the elimination of those constraints. When the constraints are being eliminated, you become totally free. Totally free. You are not constrained or limited or determined by those kind of external phenomena. For instance, you may know that stealing is bad. You may know something about it, yet you don't to steal. Because you are not, the concept is not so clear to you. You are not being able to eliminate the contradictions that is there, that living an upright life requires this kind of commitment. And that's very clear and distinct to you. You have not been able to see that. And then at the end, you find that you like this and you don't like this at the same time. Going to what you said again, I think we can see, like what he said, Kierkegaard. He speaks that at the first stage, being a human being passes through stages. He passes through aesthetic stage, ethical stage, and as well as religious stage. In aesthetic stage, a person is fragmented, is not able to make ethical decision. He likes Regina, yet he hates Regina. That's aesthetic stage. Okay, aesthetic stage. Aesthetic stage that remains there, fragmented. You are not able to make any decision. That's what stage. This aesthetic stage. You are able to make a decision. But then you ask yourself a question: how long will I be doing this kind of life? Let's make a decision. Decide to marry Regina. And then exclude all the rest. That will make the ethical decision. But Kierkegaard continues to say that even if I made an ethical state, I still find a problem. I am not sure whether the Regina I've married is far better than those whom I left. Because I've not tested all the girls to see that they are less better than Regina. Why? Because there's an obscurity into his mind. It's not very clear in his mind. Because it's not able to explain the contradiction. Then he jumps to the word called leap of faith. Leap of faith. Leap of faith. Passionate commitment to the absurdity. Means that I can't even understand why I should do that. It's clear to me. But the point is this one. For the Kierkegaard to come to a leap of faith, He has to be very clear in his mind, very clear that I should do that. And that should be to him very clear and distinct that I must do that. It's again a work of reason.
Okay, now time is not with us, so we could continue for a longer time. I just thank you for attending. It's a very interesting topic. Thank the doctor for introducing this topic and posing it to us, so that we can make some reflections and come up with some several conceptions. What is ethics, the role of ethics, the question of ethics with time, history. Thank you very much. I think I have to appreciate everything I've learned from you. First, to begin with, Brother Emmanuel Kashumba, Fidelis Kashumba. I like the way you posed the question on knowing and doing, knowledge and deeds. I think it reminds me of something to do with the difference between information and transformation. You see, you can be very well informed but untransformed. Yeah. And the doctor for bringing up the concepts of meditation, contemplation. They're very interesting topics for me, especially. For example, the question of contemplation, really I'm bad crazy with that. I did my long essay on contemplation, of course, relating seeing it in my long essay for philosophy, trying to see it, contemplation as an alternative consciousness. It's a very interesting thing for me, and that's why I've put even a segment on contemplation in our platform website. Of course, it is in Kiswahili, it's called Amali za Taamuli. It's a contemplative practices. Of course, to help people engage with contemplative practices because they are very beneficial, as you explained. And again, Brother Mtitu, Ansgar Patience Mtitu, for posing the question for why yes or no. If you already know the consequences of something like slavery and its effect and how history has proved something like that bad, then why have a yes or no? That's a very interesting question for me. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to pose one question for the doctor, and that will be the concluding word, of course, for him, and after that we shall make a clap, and that will be the conclusion. Okay, then that's the question. Now, doctor, why have you come up with this topic? Perhaps because before you answer, I like to, because it's a conclusion, I like to welcome you to the coming presentation and talk like this to be hosted by and presented by Brother Patience. Brother Ansgar Patience Mtitu is going to present on something, is taking back to Africa now, in phrasing of the topic. It says something like a tool, is finding a tool to liberate Africans from neocolonialism. It seems for him neocolonialism is obvious in Africa. Then he's trying to see, can Kant's conception of enlightenment be a tool for liberating Africans from neocolonialism? So his topic is like Kant's conception of enlightenment, a tool to liberate Africans from neocolonialism. So brother, be prepared. Perhaps we shall come up with some conclusions different, like maybe perhaps we don't need Kant's conclusions, or perhaps we need them, and hope we'll get into that. Now back to you, doctor. Please take us to the conclusion, telling us why especially you chose this topic. Is this because you saw the dangers of that you are going to lose some critical values as time goes on, or what? Welcome.
Actually, I came with this topic. This time now, we are writing a book. They are writing, I think, in the new curriculum that students have to study history and ethics. I am finding this a danger, a danger that in the process they are going to create hypocrites and idiots. I do not see that they are really making an attempt to make reflection, content meditation on it. They are simply trying to connect people's way of behavior, doings, the antiquity, and trying to see how people of the contemporary world of Tanzanians would live that, disregarding the ontic order, disregarding the relationship existing between ontic order and moral order. That ethics is a result of the engagement of the facts, engaging the reflection, meditation, contemplation of the facts in order to create new possibilities. New possibilities. What I see is if that people want to be forced to leave the antiquity, which is not possible because they have no imagination of the antiquity. They are not connected to their ontic order, their order reality. So you are forcing people to go and live their life which they have no connection at all. At the end, they will say yes, in fact they are not going to live it. Because they have no imagination, there is no connection. But not going to live it. They are not going to make reflection. Well, reflection on what? Not going to make reflection, not make contemplating the meditation. So I'm finding a danger that we are going to encounter. We might use a lot of money, but I doubt if we are going to produce an intended result.
Thank you very much.